Hello, everyone. This is Alex Clark with Generation Vatican II. Hey, we've got another great show here today, but real quick, I need to make an announcement. Work requirements, unfortunately, are ramping up for me over the next couple months. I will still be working diligently on season four, and I intend to try and get monthly interviews out for you all to watch. However, if you see less and less of Generation Vatican II, that's why. Rest assured, it will be coming out later this year. So today, we have a part two. We just interviewed Steve Ray with CatholicConvert.com, and the interview, unfortunately, I didn't get to all my questions, so I asked Steve to come back on the show so we could finish it out, and he graciously obliged me. So if you would please welcome again, fellow former anti-Catholic Steve Ray. Steve, how you doing?
Good, Alex. Good to be with you. Cold here in Michigan, but that's okay.
You're up in Michigan. You guys just got
Had
a
a new
snowfall up there, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, but we also had a new grandbaby since I talked to you last, so that makes number 19.
Oh, that sounds so great. So how is the young baby doing?
Fine. My
Good.
wife goes over every day and helps out for a while, and the baby's doing great. And the cool thing, Alex, is we got a picture of my daughter took the baby when it was only 3 days old over to visit my 100-year-old mother.
Oh,
And
goodness.
we have pictures of that baby sleeping on my mother's lap, and my mother just staring at her with a smile for over half an hour. She just stood there and smiled at that baby, 100 years old.
Oh, gosh, that sounds so fantastic. I'm so happy for you and your wife as well. My parents were actually just in town visiting, and when they left, my wife pointed out that every time they leave, my mom cries. We just see like she holds it together until the very end, and as they're driving away, we can see her just put her head down and start to cry a little bit. We don't live so close that they can visit every day, unfortunately. But yeah, it's real sad to see them go. They love being here and being able to see their grandson, and we love
Yep,
having them, of course. So I'm
yep.
sure your daughter really enjoys the support you provide her, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good kids. I have four good kids. The youngest is 30, the oldest is 44. That makes me pretty old.
Oh gosh. Let's see. I'm 33 now. There's one after me, and she is 31. And the oldest sibling of mine is she 39? Yeah, I think she just turned 39 this year. So we span not quite as wide a grouping as that, but you said 13 years is the spread on your children. Um,
Our four kids, yep.
hmm Yeah, yeah. So that sounds. Oh gosh, family is great. Hey, that sounds like a little jumping in point. The
All right, let's go.
responsibility, the responsibility you bear toward your family. Um, I hear a lot of people talk about how absolutely phenomenally important it is to maintain the family unit. And I feel like there's two issues here that I have perhaps incorrect opinions of. And so that's kind of what I want to do here today is I want to tell you my opinion and I want you to tell me how I'm wrong, okay? Uh,
All right.
so we have like the nuclear family, mom, dad, children. Maybe even you could go grandparents as well. And then you have extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, maybe second cousins, once removed, twice removed. Uh, how how important is it that you maintain connections and that you see them regularly? Like what would you say is like a good family cohesion within those varying levels of family?
Wow. Family is important. The I would say that before we even start with a family, we would start with ourselves individually. And
Okay.
the Catechism and the Bible teach us we need to love ourselves. That sounds terrible, but even when the Catechism talks about self-defense, it says that our love of ourself is our first responsibility in a sense. And I don't mean by that selfishness, but we need to take care of ourselves. Like just before we started the show, I talked about how my wife and I are going to go down and exercise after this.
Uh-huh.
We have to take care of ourselves, get enough sleep, eat well, take care of ourselves, be healthy, because everything else will fall apart if we don't do that. So we get required oftentimes so many responsibilities pulling us left and right that we forget to take care of our own bodies and our own minds and our own prayer life and so on. And that should be always a primary issue for us, because if we fail to do that, I will die way too young and not be around to take care of extended family. So that would be the beginning. Now, having said that, we have limitations. We're limited by space and time, and we can't do everything. And as much as we'd like to do, I have to view my wife as my primary responsibility and time. And yesterday was Valentine's. I don't know when this is going to be published, but yesterday was Valentine's. And I did another show on EWTN on Catholic Answers Live about loving your spouse. And we did a whole hour talk about that. So loving your spouse is significant, and primarily because she is part of me. We're one. It's a bond. It's a covenant. Not like what I used to think as a Protestant. It's a contract. But we become one in a covenant form that God has made it. And so it says, what man does not take care of his own body? When I love my wife and take care of her, I'm taking care of my own self. Now, beyond that, and there with the wife, there's a lot. There's the sexual aspect, there's the emotional aspect, there's the financial aspect, there's all the different aspects of life with a spouse. Very complicated, by the way, but delightfully so. Then you got the kids. The kids are another dimension. With the kind of the circles, we're going out from myself to my spouse and out to my own kids. They're my primary aspect as well. Before I start thinking of cousins and aunts and uncles and all those, I have to think of my own children, because they come from me, and
literally
God
part of you.
Absolutely. And however, though, in our family, I always emphasized that my kids had to respect my wife. I told them that your mom and I have been lovers long before you got here, and we're going to be lovers together long after you're gone. And if you think you're going to disrupt that while you're here, you've got another thing coming, because it ain't going to happen. You are going to be respectful of your mom. You're not going to upset our relationship. You're not going to upset the family. You are guests here, in a sense, for about 18 years. And they said, you love mom more than you love us, don't you? I said, heck yes. Her and I have a covenant relationship. You're our kids. We love you. And we'll do anything for you. We love you. But your mom and I have a special relationship that you guys can never touch. And so that gave them a good perspective. And now, guess what? All four of them are married, and they have the same relationship with their spouses, and they understand that, and they love it, and they're raising their own kids. But the kids understood their place in the family, and I had to discipline them and love them. And you ask about our relationship with the family. So I would say that with the kids, I would always take the place of the head of the home and the disciplinarian. I would be the one to, when punishment was necessary. I did that. That was Dad's job. Mom was the nourisher. She's the nurturer. I didn't want my wife in that position. And when she's young, of course, when the babies are young, the mother has to do that. Dad's off at work, and I had jobs. I always self-employed, so I was always quite busy. But that's the relationship we had with our kids, and the kids had to obey. They had to treat their mom with respect. I told the kids right from day one, you never say no to your mother. You never raise your voice to your mother. Mm-hmm. You never argue or show disrespect to your mother. If you do, the hammer's going to fall, because I don't tolerate that. You treating my girlfriend that way. And the kids, they loved, even to this day, they adore their mother, because they learned that from young age. So these are the kind of responsibilities that we have. The father to keep peace in the home, to discipline, to love, and to be the strong nurturer too. Then you go out. My mom is now 100 years old. After we're done here today and we exercise, my wife is gonna go later to help our daughter, who just had a new baby 2 weeks ago. And while she's there, I'm gonna go over and read stories to my mom. My mom read stories to me when I was a boy. Now she can't get out of bed, and I go read stories to her. Okay. And my brothers, we all work together to keep mom entertained and make sure she knows that we love her up until the end. She won't last a whole lot longer, but I know that no matter how much I go visit her, I'm always going to feel guilty that I didn't visit her enough. And that's just, but you can't do everything, Alex. We got limitations as to what we can do. So with parents, they become our responsibility in older age. First, they took care of us and changed our diapers. Now we change their diapers. And it's we the book of Sirach is full of taking care of parents and loving your parents and honoring your parents, and do not despise them when they get old, and even if they lose their minds, if their minds go, you never despise them. So you've got a responsibility now to your parents. Almost it's a reverse of what they did for you, now you do for them, but it's our responsibility as family. And then we got, I take less concern about, then I do have brothers and sisters of my own, and some I have to admit have very little to do with, because we don't agree on a lot of things and they don't carry on conversations, and it's very stressful with some, because they are kind of opposed to Christianity and all the things that I stand for, and I'm not the kind that will be back down and not talk about what I'm interested in. I think it's my responsibility, and they don't want to hear it. So we get together. When we get together, it's pleasant, and it's but it's not like, I feel much more at home with Catholic brothers and sisters than I do with biological brothers and sisters, in a way. But at the same time, I want to be a good example. I want to share with them. I help them out. I have a brother who does not, he's got issues, and so I bought him a house trailer. I bought him a house trailer, and I got him settled in there, and now he's living there, and I gave it to him. And I'm not bragging or anything. You asked me about our family responsibilities, and so I do what I can to help my family financially, emotionally, and every other way. Then we move out to the wider realm of cousins and aunts and uncles, and I really don't have much. I have over 50 cousins, but we moved when my dad, when I was young, and I never really knew them. And so there's a bit of contact, usually when it's a funeral or something. And that's all good. And they know who I am, and they know what I stand for. Nobody that has any contact with me whatsoever doesn't know that I'm a Catholic and that I practice my faith, and I expect them to be Catholic someday too. So they know that there's that responsibility. So does that kind of cover the bases that you were hoping I'd talk about?
Yeah. So it sounds like you started with the responsibility to self, and it sounds like you kind of branched from that. And the responsibility
There's concentric circles. Circles.
The responsibility you owe to people decreases as they get less and less removed, or they get more and more removed, less and less involved with you specifically, because that's
right.
Your primary.
Well, it's like the solar system. The sun gives more light to Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars than it does to Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. And the closer things are to me, I think God gives us the responsibility. The closer we are, the concentric circles or realm of spheres of influence, I could even call them. As they get out less, the sun hits them less.
And then at some point,
it's just reality. You can't. One of the things we need to do is face our own limitations. I like what Clint Eastwood says. What didn't he say? You got to know your own limitations one time.
Clint Eastwood? Maybe. I feel like
a man needs to know his own limitations.
Okay. Do you remember what movie perhaps it came from?
No, I don't. I don't. But I love Clint Eastwood. I think it's.
Where's my dad?
Great actor.
I need him. He would be able to answer that question in a heartbeat. Okay, so like you, and then you marry someone, and you join in one flesh. So that's how you get your primary responsibility to your wife. I know a lot of people don't really like to talk about it that much, but I'm glad you hit on it. I think it was Thomas Aquinas who said that like your spouse, you have a greater responsibility to your spouse. You should love your spouse more than you do your children, because your children are direct descendants of you, but they're not someone you have joined flesh with, which is your spouse, because you have married that person. You have chosen them to become part of your body.
Right.
So then you have your spouse, your children, and then you also have your parents, and they're kind of like, inverse of your children, with familial relationship, brothers, sisters, branching outward, grandparents, grandchildren, cousins, and then, all the way out to like eighth cousins. And eventually you kind of have a diminishing return to general population. And yes, you are a member of society and bear kind of like, general responsibility to them. Understanding, first and foremost, I am limited in my resources, time, capabilities. Primary responsibility, myself, my salvation, my well-being. My spouse is joined to me. So my spouse also gets that same sort of primary attitude, and then decrease from there.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So, so you mentioned something about your siblings not being, you have less contact with them because you're a rather staunch Catholic. Okay, so what about if you have, it sounds like one of your siblings is not Catholic. Like, what's your responsibility to bring that person to the church? This is your brother or sister now. This is not just Joe Schmo on the street. This isn't your colleague at work. What is your responsibility to your family?
It's easier to relate to the guy at work. It's easier to relate to the stranger on the bus,
Really?
sometimes, than it is your own family members, because they know you.
Shared history? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because you've grown up with you, and an older brother doesn't like to take advice from his younger brother. 12 years difference. And there can be a lot of different dynamics between brothers and sisters. And all of them in our family, there was ever any issues. There was never any fights or any problems with mom and dad. It was just that they grew up, my older brother and sister grew up in a different age. And they are much older. My mom had 12 years of miscarriages between 2 and then 3. And they were already grown up and off to the army before I could even remember them, pretty much. Okay. And they every family has its own stories, but they grew up without religion until they were about 12. My mom and dad both converted to the Baptist church, and it was a very strict and legalistic Baptist church. You can't dance, you can't smoke, you can't drink, you can't hang around with anybody else who does. You can't wear pedal pushers, and you can't. And my sister, when she was getting married, the pastor told her that if her and her husband did not give their son to be a missionary, that God would kill their son, take their son. I mean, it was a very bizarre fundamentalist Baptist group that my parents were part of. And it turned my brother and sister away from Christianity. And there was other worse problems in the Baptist church. We talk about the sexual issues in the Catholic church. Well, they're worse than Protestant churches, and it happened to in our family. I won't go any more than that because
I'm sorry to hear about that.
And so that turned them away from Christianity, I think, altogether. So now I come along, and I'm an enthusiastic evangelical that go after them right away and excited about the Lord and so on. Well, they've already decided that they're not going to do that. They've fallen for the lie of the world to become materialists and secularists. And so that causes a problem. So then when you get together, they want to talk about their materialistic ideas of abortion is better than sliced bread and all these kind of things. Well, I'm not the kind to just keep quiet about those things. So we get in the past, not recently, but past very heated discussions. And it made it very stressful for Mom because she didn't like fighting and discussing and all those kind of arguments. So it came that we just leave it alone. There's a time in family where Jesus said that if you go into a town and they accept you, good. If they don't, then leave and shake the dust off your feet. And there's a time where you say, I've said what I can say. If they're open to say more, talk more, then I will. But I'm not going to get into endless arguments with them, and it's better just to love them and to talk about things that we can get along with. Not politics and not religion. Then we can get along fine. But there comes a time in family where you get diminishing returns. You get into arguments, and it's going to do more damage than it does good. I wrote an article, and you can find it on my website, called 6 Rules for Dealing with Non-Catholic Family and Friends. And I basically say, don't argue with them. Don't get into arguments that are going to burn bridges. Love them more than you ever loved them before. Do your homework, study, and get ready so that if they do come back and ask you questions, you're ready to answer them. Show the joy of the Lord in your life so that they can see that what you're doing is right, because they don't have that joy in their life. Pray and make sacrifices for them. And be patient, because God doesn't do everything overnight. Be patient in dealing with your family members. Don't push and rush them faster than they're ready to go or faster than the Holy Spirit's working in their life. And lastly, ask God to bring somebody else into their life to influence them, because they're not going to listen to you. Family members, it's very difficult to talk to family members. It's just whether it's a spouse who's opposed to you on religion or something, or parents or family of other kind. It's easier with strangers. So my wife and I learned this with our in-laws because they didn't like us becoming Catholic. So we said, Lord, bring somebody else into their life to influence them. And he did. We think it's our job, but it's not necessarily our job. It's the Holy Spirit's job. He may use us. He may use someone else. So don't assume it's got to be you, and don't go in and burn down all the bridges because you think you've got to get them all in the church. Sometimes it's better just to love them, pray for them, step back, and let the Lord do it on his own time, and maybe with somebody else.
Okay, so I have a family member who knows decently well the teachings of the Catholic Church and has since fallen away from the church. This family member of mine, I was trying to have respectful, tactful conversations with, and not to toot my own horn, was actually having a pretty good effect with. We had beneficial conversations. We're both able to eloquently say exactly what our positions were, understand the other person, and make sound argumentation, and then able to point out, hey, here's a flaw in your logic, here's a flaw in my logic, let's try and rectify these things and come to a mutual understanding. But I just felt stonewalled over and over again, like he just wouldn't want to make the jump back into Catholicism. I remember speaking with a spiritual advisor who said, this person obviously understands what they're doing and what the truths of the Catholic Church are. You no longer have a responsibility to this person. Actually, I think my spiritual advisor just said, you don't have a responsibility.
Right, exactly.
I'll be honest, I wrestled with that for a long time. It didn't feel right. It felt kind of like just wrong. Like I love this person. I should be trying. I should be spending myself in a worthy cause to bring this person back to the church.
You can love them. You can pray for them.
Yeah. Like, what you said, pray for them, ask for intercessions from other people, recognize where you don't have an effect. But like, I'll be honest, I finally accepted this advice because of all the vice in me. Like, I want to be lazy. I want to be greedy with my time. I don't want to be constantly reaching out to this person. I didn't try to shift my attempts toward prayer and asking for intercessions because of the right reasons, which perhaps made it even worse. I started doing that because I was like, great, not my fault anymore, not my problem. Go deal with your own crummy life, and hopefully God sends you someone that can do better than I can. And like, that was also wrong,
Well, there's a time of frustration. Jesus was frustrated with people. He'd just say, I can't do any great works here because of your lack of faith. And then he left.
Okay.
God gets frustrated with us too. He gets frustrated with people when he does things for them and he created them and he redeems them, and then they don't respond to him. And it says that God gave them over to their sin because they refused to acknowledge him as God and they refused to give thanks. Romans chapter 1, he gave them over to their sins and he walks away. God never walks away. You know what I mean by that, though. He gave them over. He said, okay, if that's what you want, that's what you can have. Yeah. And there comes time for us too that we are real human beings. We're made in God's image, and there's a time for us to shake the dust off our feet and move on. Mm-hmm. And there's many times where I deal with people. I get emails all the time with people who want to argue and fight about the Catholic faith, or they want to challenge me on things I say. And I can sense if someone is honest, and I think this is the tipping point. If they're honest and they really want to have an honest discussion, or if they just want to argue and fight. I have no time for somebody who just wants to argue and fight. But if somebody really I sense is an honesty there, then I'll take the time necessary to work with them. Mm-hmm. But there's also time to shake the dust and walk away.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we talked last time about the church, your responsibility to the church. I feel like I've encountered a rather annoying mentality in America about your responsibility to specifically your parish church. People who would say like, oh yeah, my parish, it's fine, but like there's no good Bible study or like outreach program or feed the poor or vacation Bible school, anything like that at my parish. So I go to this other church this other Catholic church, which is better. Like the music's better, the preaching's better. They've got, a Wednesday morning men's Bible study for me to go to. It's just so much better there. And so that's where I go. And my opinion is, hold on, no. Understanding your restrictions and limitations, you need to make your best effort to improving your church first. And then go. What do you think?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I don't think it's a clear cut one way or another. First of all, there is no obligation for us now to have our own parish. There was a time when you lived in a town and they had the Catholic Church there, and there wasn't another town for 20 miles. And each village or town had its own parish. And then that was geographically, you were pretty much stuck there, and then you had to do the best you could with it. However, today I live in an area where there are within probably 15 minutes of my house 10 different Catholic parishes. Now, which one is my geographical parish? The one that's closest to me, or it's a different situation for a lot of us today than it may have been 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, I'm going to this parish and they don't have a Bible study. They don't have this. There's nothing for the kids. And then you ask yourself, well, what are the reasons for that? Does the priest oppose those things? Does he not care?
Okay.
Is it an older parish that's stuck in its ways and they don't want those things? They just come for the Mass and that's the way it is? If that's the case, then I'm going somewhere else. If it's a parish where I've told people, they said, well, my parish is very unfriendly parish. And I come in there, nobody says hello to me, nobody. Then I go sit there and I get up and I leave and no one says a word. I said, then here's your new job. You get there 15 minutes early every Mass and you shake hands with people as they walk in the door. Say, hello, it's so good to have you here. Now all of a sudden it's a friendly parish, isn't it? Because you did something about it. You got out there in the morning and you started shaking hands and greeting people. Now, there's many ways we can do that. My dad was great at that. He was Baptist, but nobody ever walked in that door that didn't get a hug and a shake and a smile, shake of hands and smile from my dad, and they all knew that my dad loved them. Everybody loved that church and so on. My son has 8 kids, and he moved to the Chicago area, and they went to the first time, they said Sunday morning, they arrived at this new house, they moved in, and they went out to Mass. And they said they walked into this Mass, and not one person said hello to them, not one person shook their hand, not one person acknowledged them, even though they had these 8 beautiful kids. And when they left, not one person had said anything to them or acknowledged them. He said, well, let's try another church this Sunday. They went to another Catholic church that Sunday nearby, and they said people came up, other families had kids, and they all came over and talked to him, and the kids got to talk, and the guy sitting in front of my son turned around and handed him $20 and said, you got a beautiful family. Take this out and buy him an ice cream after Mass. Now, what church are you going to go to?
Yeah, obviously. The one that's very sociably outgoing and gregarious.
Right. Now, should my son say, well, we went to the one first that wasn't friendly, we're going to stay here and try and help this parish. Well, what, to the detriment of his own kids? Mm-hmm. I have a relative, my brother, who wanted to go to his local parish, and he went there, and it was boring, and there was no things for kids to do, and they didn't have any extracurriculars, and he lost all his kids. He's stuck there, and now one of them goes to this big evangelical church, and 2 of them are living with people, and they just left. There's nothing there to inspire them. They didn't see anything there that inspired them as young people. Now, our family, I'm not saying that we're better than anybody else, but we went to a charismatic Catholic parish where they had lots of Bible studies, and they had lots of youth groups, and they had prayer meetings for the young people, and they did things together, and they had Life Teen. They had a Mass on Sunday evening just for the kids, and then after that they had an hour of activities in Life Teen, and that's where my 2 older kids found their spouses. And they loved the Catholic Church because there were things there to do. Now, which church should I go to? Should I go to the one and say we're going to stay here and change it even though it's boring and there's nothing for the kids like my brother did and who lost his kids? Or do I go find a parish that has lots of activities and Life Teen and sports activities and things for the kids where you can find a spouse and where you can find encouragement? And my son, while he was there, let me tell you this, found 4 other boys and they had a club. And they formed this kind of a friendship, and they said, we're going to marry virgins, and we're going to stay virgin until we're married. And they had a club to help each other. And when they went out to the amusement parks, they said that when a girl came with, they had what's called the babe alert. Babe alert, babe alert. When a girl came by with hardly any clothes on, one of them would yell out babe alert, and they'd all look the other way to keep their eyes pure. Now, should I send my son should I go to a parish that doesn't have any young people, that doesn't have any youth groups, that doesn't do anything? Or should I go to a parish where my son can have Life Teen and find boys that want to do the same thing he does? And those boys are now all fathers who still get together and talk on the phone and share experiences together. So we have to vote sometimes with our feet. Now, let's go back a bit. Maybe if you're in a parish, there's not another church for 20 miles away. Maybe you start a Bible study. But I just wrote down also in preparation for this, Romans 12, 1 Corinthians 12 says that all of us have different gifts. Some have the gifts of prophecy, contributions, exhorting, teaching, service, aid, administrations. Not all of us can teach a Bible study. Not all of us can handle administrations if the church is financially in trouble. Some of us may go to the priest and say, look, I have a financial degree. I can help you solve the financial problems in the parish. Maybe we can join the Parish Family Life Commission. When Janet and I became Catholics, we were members of the Parish Life Commission. We started all these monthly things in our parish where we started yesterday was Valentine's Day. So in our parish, we started a Valentine's dinner for the couples. And we actually had tables all set up, and we had red tablecloths, and we had events and dancing and everything for the couples to come in. And we had babysitting so they could drop their kids off and have an evening together. We had, when Halloween came, we had All Saints Day for the kids. We had contests, and everybody got to get candy, but they had to dress up like a saint. And we had the best costume of the year award and so on. Well, we did those things because the parish didn't have them. Every month we had a new event for families. We started a daddy-daughter dance where dads would bring their daughters in, and they'd have a whole evening of dancing and have a dinner together. Dads take their daughters on a date. And you tell the daughter, this is how a boy should treat you when you get older. You go out, I'm going to show you how you should be treated. So we're going on a date tonight. Where are we going, Dad? To the parish. Of course, we're going to the daddy-daughter dance. The next month we had a mommy-son dance. And my wife and I set these up in our parish. One a month, we had something new. I also taught the Bible study at the parish. So we were busy, but we never neglected our family. We had a rule. You never let the church get more than 2 evenings of your life because the parish can eat you alive. So when you're deciding that you're going to get involved in a parish to make it a lively, friendly, active parish, don't let the parish take the precedent over your family. Never do more than 2 nights a week, say, for example, involved, and make sure your kids are somehow involved in that, because families should do things together with their kids. So bottom line is, maybe stay at your parish. Maybe it's better for you and your family to find another parish, which is better. You have to make some very careful value judgments as to long-term effects by staying in one parish or going to another parish.
Okay, so
sometimes it's best to vote with your feet.
So I liked what you said. I thought you had good, first off, yes and no, and you did a good job explaining that. I'd like to add to that conversation, and then I guess try to make it back to saying that I was right at the beginning. You gave an example of someone who put the parish over his family, and all his kids are gone. And then you gave an example of you doing great things at your parish, and now your kids are very well-formed Catholics with terrific Catholic families, almost in a sense completely opposite of you and your siblings.
Right.
So what I have seen, to build on this conversation, I remember when I lived in San Diego, California, the church we were going to needed new lights, So one of the parishioners had an electrical company and donated the labor for lights installation, and the church had to buy the cheap part, which is the actual lights. So here he's trying to better his church by making a donation where he can. Owns an electrical company, donating lights. Great.
Right.
Maybe you don't have to be something quite so advanced, or you gave examples of financial help. Maybe it could be something as simple as hey, I'm going to stay an hour after the noon mass and I'm going to dust down the sanctuary. It could be something like that, which is just I'm going to do my little part and help out the church. This is something that needs to be helped with, okay? Just giving that sort of a banal example to say you don't have to do something massive to help improve your church. Now contrast that with another example I saw in San Diego, which was there was one parish, St. Bridget's, where all the young adults went to. Everyone from 18 to 39 went to this parish because that was where all the young kids went. All the college students and all the recently graduated, all the yuppies, the young urban professionals, they all went there. It was the cool place to be, and that's where you met people. Which means San Diego's a huge place, and there are a lot of churches. I don't know how many parishes were just like struggling and were like just old people because people would drive 45 minutes into town to go to St. Bridget's because they wanted to be with their friends and then they wanted to go to the brunch afterwards. Not because there was necessarily anything wrong with their parish, they just weren't invested in their local community. Now, there might be a broader conversation about how culture in America has changed and your community isn't necessarily the 5 blocks of neighbors. That's maybe outside the topic of our conversation today. But just to strike back home that, like, I feel like maybe 80% of the parishioners at this parish should not have been going there so eagerly. They should have been trying a little more to improve their own parish because they would be like, hey, well, you know what? I really just want to see my friend at church. So I'm going to always go to this parish instead of going to my parish 3 weeks a month. And then the 1 week we're all going to go together, you know?
That's easy for you to say now, Alex, when your son is only 1 year old.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Wait till your son is 15 years old and he's losing interest in the parish that you're going to because there is nothing going on.
Okay.
And then it's easy to say that now. Wait till your son and your kids are in their teens and you're wanting them to be with the right group and the right crowd. And they're going to either go to St. Bridget's and be with those people or they're going to go out to the bars and be with somebody else. Then where are you going to go to parish? Where are you going to go to your parish? Now, there's no reason why you can't be involved in 2 parishes. You can go on Sunday Mass and be at St. Bridget's so your kids can have the influence and friendships with all those others. And when they get their own car, they may decide to go there and be in that parish. But you could still be at St. Joachim over near your house and still be involved there as well. It's a juggling match. It's a juggling. And what are your priorities? And why is the church near you not attracting young people? What is it about St. Bridget's that is attracting young people? And would I rather have my kids going there and meeting other young people who are Catholic, who love the Lord, and who are going to keep him? Paul says, bad company corrupts good morals. Well, good company encourages good morals. So where do I want my kids to go to Mass? Where do I want them to go to school? It's the same thing. You could say, well, I'm going to send my kids to the public schools because, good grief, there's no good influence there. I want my kids to be a good influence on the teachers and the pupils in that public school that's close by. Or are you going to send them to a good Catholic school or homeschool them? In a way, it's the same argument. Where do I want my kids? Do I want them in the public school where they're going to be negatively influenced and eventually leave the faith? Or do I want them in a good Catholic school? And I'm not saying all Catholic schools are good. There's some that are worse than public schools as far as I'm concerned. Because you said sometimes you don't even know who the real enemy is. If you're going to a Catholic school, you assume it's good, and it may not be. So, but it would be the same as saying I'm going to send my kid to the public school because they need to be there to be the salt and the light. They got to be there to be the good influence. Whereas maybe you'll lose your kids and maybe pull them out of there and send them to a good Catholic school, homeschool them or something else. So you got to make a lot of decisions about a parish and about your kids' lives. My brother went to this parish. That was the local parish, and he lost all his kids. Another guy that I know went to a very good parish, but he was there 7 days a week, and he lost his kids because he never was home with them. So those are decisions we have to make. Each family's different.
So again, we talk about how, like, your responsibility to you, your spouse, your kids, first take care of them. Their salvation matters more than the population of,
Of
whatever,
course.
St. Vincent or something. Okay. All
Of
right.
course.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's talk about interrelationships. So my wife has this saying that I think is spot on. I want to be holy and pious, but still be a real person. Which is like, what she's trying to say there is, there's got to be a way to practice a good Christian Catholic spirituality, getting to heaven and doing God's work for the kingdom on earth, and not like retreat into a hermit hole or be the person that's like, wearing a veil at the grocery store and has 5 rosaries on her hands walking around, Like, there's got to be a way to be able to practice your spirituality and not and still be a real person, not be like that weirdo that's on a street corner or something,
The hermit could be a very unholy person.
Okay.
The hermit, just because he's there being a hermit, praying all day, he could be very selfish and self-centered and not wanting to help anybody else. That's why he's a hermit, because he's maybe that hermit is very selfish. Maybe he's not holy at all. Let's look at the Holy Family. When we're in Israel at Nazareth, and I'm going back in April and May again, I'd have sold out trips for April and May for Israel, getting back in the air again. People want to go on a pilgrimage, we go to all these wonderful sites. So check out CatholicConvert.com. I'll throw a little plug in there. But when we're at Nazareth, I always, in front of the house where the Holy Family lived, which was a cave, by the way, not a house. Mm-hmm. And in front of that cave, I give a talk called A Day in the Life of the Holy Family. And I like to say, what is the first thing the Holy Family did when they got up every morning? And everybody said, they prayed. Mm-hmm. I said, is that the first thing you do in the morning? No, we go to the bathroom. Well, so did the Holy Family. The Holy Family, Mary had to get, and they didn't have plumbing in their cave. So where did Mary go to the bathroom? I mean, people say, you can't talk about the Blessed Virgin like that. And I said, of course I can talk about the Blessed Virgin like that. She lived a real life. She didn't walk 3 feet off the ground. So what if she's the Immaculate Conception? She still got dirty feet when she went to the well. She still got bit by mosquitoes. Flies buzzed around her head like everybody else's head. Mm-hmm. So don't give me this Holy Family is so holy and I could never be like them. No, they walked on the ground like you do, and they had to go to the bathroom in the morning too. What did Mary do every morning and night? She had to walk 15 minutes to the well to get water. So now Mary, she had to change Jesus's diapers. You don't think of Jesus pooping his diapers. Yeah, and it smelled as bad as anybody else's diapers. The Son of God pooped his pants, and Mary had to clean those dirty diapers. And can you imagine Mary saying, oh my goodness, I used to be such a spiritual young lady, and now I'm doing all of these things. What, I wish I could just get rid of this kid and go back to praying and being a holy woman. Mm-hmm. No, when are we the most holy? The definition of being holy is doing exactly at this moment what God wants me to do at this moment. That's being spiritual. And it is also, like the Catechism says, the glory of God is man fully alive. Mm-hmm. Fully in your day-to-day activities, fully being human. God made us to be human, to change diapers, to live in the real world. That's when we are truly spiritual, when we are doing exactly at this moment what God wants us to do at this moment. So, is it more, and I always ask this at the House of the Holy Family in Nazareth, is it more spiritual to pray the rosary or to change a stinky diaper? Which is the more spiritual thing? See, people say, well, the changing the dirty diaper is a mundane thing. Praying, obviously, is more spiritual. No, Mother Teresa would disagree with you, and so would Mary. Both of them would say that changing the baby's diaper is the most spiritual thing you can do at that moment. And once you change the baby's diaper, then go pray the rosary with the baby. But living the daily life, like my wife said before I got on here, she said, just tell them that being spiritual means that you make the right choice on little things every day. You make the choice towards virtue. Choosing and growing in virtue means that you make little choices every day in the right direction. In other words, you and I were talking earlier about exercising. Mm-hmm. You exercise. How do you get strong? By exercise, a little bit every day. And it hurts. Sometimes it hurts. But you don't get anything out of it if you don't keep working at it. And even in virtue for men with pornography and all of the things out there trying to grab us guys. And we're hardwired for that. We all know that we're hardwired for pornography. We have testosterone pumping through our veins. How do we win that? How do we stay holy? How do we stay faithful to our spouses? Because every day we have two dogs inside of us fighting. We have the dog of lust and testosterone, and we have the dog of being made in the image of God and wanting to be holy and the desire to be like God. And these two dogs are fighting all the time. Which one wins? The dog you feed the most.
Yeah, yeah.
You feed one dog and you starve the other. You do daily small acts of virtue. You build virtue in your life by making small acts every day, by changing diapers, by taking care of people, by loving people, making hard decisions. It doesn't mean praying all day long, for heaven's sakes. Jesus didn't pray all day long. He had to sneak away once in a while to pray to his Father. All day long he was doing other things, which would have been considered mundane and tiring and aggravating, people around you all the time. But every day you make little choices, little things to say yes. My daughter, and I'll end with this. My daughter went to Steubenville University. She's now a PhD in philosophy, and her husband's a PhD in theology. And at the parish we went to, a guy who had a degree in theology said to my daughter, "You're never going to make much money with a degree in theology, I can tell you." And my daughter said, "I'm not getting a degree in philosophy to make money. I'm getting a degree to help me be a saint."
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And he said, "So you think you can be a saint, do you?" And she said, "Yes." She said, "Because God never throws anything at me that I can't handle. He's always going to give me the grace. And as long as I say no to sin and say yes to him, I can be a saint, and so can you."
Just mulling that for a second. Mm-hmm. I guess, when you were saying about first off, thank you, Mrs. Ray. That was great. Thank you.
He said, "Thank you, Janet, for your comments on Little the Virtues."
I was thinking about, I had two thoughts. One, like the purpose of the incarnation. Why did Jesus become man? So that he could experience humanity in its fullness, like God. Jesus is 100% God and man. He is man as well. Don't forget that part. So like there is holiness in living your life as Jesus did, which is as a person. So there is daily mundane life. We actually covered this a little bit in season 3, Lumen Gentium, the church's constitution on the church in the modern world. And then second thought was, are you familiar with Opus Dei?
The work of God.
Yeah, doing your job, specifically your job, and offering that as a work to God. So like, do it as best you can. Do it in a holy way. Holy way just meaning like, I'm going to be nice to my coworkers when I type my emails, and I'm going to do my work diligently and do it to my best of abilities. And I'm not going to do
because you're doing it for God, not for your boss. You're doing it for God. When I used to have my own business, I have always had different businesses, but I used to do sales, and I went out to my company. So I'd go out to an event, somebody who's taking bids, and I'd say, "I'd like to take care of your building. I'll do it." And he said, "Why should I hire you over the other guys?" I said, "Because I'm a Catholic." And they said, "Well, what does that have to do with anything?" I said, "Because you're not my primary boss. He's my primary boss. I work for him. I don't work for you. And because I work for him, I'm going to do a good job for you."
That's a really funny sales pitch, actually. That's great.
I got more business that way than you'd ever believe.
That's fantastic. That's really fun. Cool. So then, like, I guess we're kind of faced with the immediate question of like, is there any need to learn about your faith beyond just like the basics of go to mass, don't hold any teaching in error, and the precepts of the church, just kind of like, a one-page summary of things to believe? Do you need to pursue, I don't know, the theology of the Theotokos or the hypostatic union of Christ and all this other stuff?
Of course.
Okay, why? If
I want
just the mundanity of life, why?
If I want to be a healthy human being, I have to eat a variety of foods. I have to
Uh-huh.
learn, take care of myself. I have to develop and grow. I can't just sit on and eat sugar stuff. You got to develop and learn and continue to grow in a business. If you any business that's standing still is actually going backwards. If a
Mhm.
person is not growing and developing and becoming mature, that means not only am I growing physically from a baby to a man, it also means that I have to grow in education. I have to continue to learn and to develop. I have to continue to learn in the faith. And by the way, who wouldn't want to learn the Catholic faith? It is so exciting. It is so invigorating. Who would be so stupid as to not want to learn it and want to develop in it? And understanding if the whole of creation is about the Trinity, the hypostatic union of Jesus, the man and God, and the whole of everything is based on the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He's the one that created, and the flavor of him is trickles down into all of reality. To understand who I am is to understand who the Trinity is and where we came from and where we're going. Who wouldn't want to learn all of that? Who wouldn't want to do that? Who would be so stupid as to say, I don't care about that? And so, yes, becoming holy means learning and continue to learn all those things, continue to grow in virtue, continue to learn more about the faith, learn more, raise your family, do things and get better and better. Because if you're not, you're going backwards.
Mm-hmm. Don't want to go backwards. Always want to know more about our Creator so that we can worship Him better.
Right.
Yeah.
I always want to know more about my wife and more about my kids and what I can do to help them and love them too.
So then we can take this and apply it to things like, what job do you take? So like I have a friend who's a doctor and like was denied jobs in Virginia because Virginia is where they invented IVF, and IVF is against Catholic teaching. And so my friend, the doctor, said, well, I'm not going to recommend IVF because I have moral objection to it. Boom, like no hospital would hire this person.
Yep.
That maintaining that fervency toward the faith and knowing that IVF is bad, that it's wrong, and then sticking to your guns and staying with it.
Yep.
We can apply this to your dress, your mode of apparel. I think we could hem and haw for a bit about what is considered immodest dress or not. Are yoga pants okay? Irrelevant. Just I think we can say as a baseline, like, are you dressing to worship God, and use a proper discernment from there.
Yep.
There's a
And
lot going on.
culture decides that a lot. Whether you're the African who lives in the jungles and the women go topless because that's just the way that's not immodest for them.
Yeah.
That's the way they dress, to the way we dress in the Western world. Modesty is in some way culturally determined, but we should be modest and function within our culture the way that is considered proper. And I agree, your friend who didn't take the jobs, there are lines we have to draw in the sand. And they may be different lines for different people, but yes, we need to make decisions in life that put Jesus Christ first. And being an abortionist or working in a place that does questionable or immoral medical procedures, or a pharmacist can't. You've got to make those decisions, and you'll be held accountable on Judgment Day for those decisions you've made.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talk recently about sending your kids to college. I personally am of the opinion that if you're worried about where your kid goes to college, then you misused 18 years of their life.
That's true. Let me carry on a little bit. I know where you're going with this.
Okay.
I'll save some time.
Yeah.
If you are right about you've not taught them well, you haven't done well for the first 18 years of their life. But there's also a lot of peer pressure, and there's a lot of other pressures. I'll make this very simple for parents. The kids look to you for the money to go, usually. Mm-hmm. And I just said to my kids, you can go to any university you want. And by the way, all of my kids went to college and they all got 4.0s because we homeschooled them and they went prepared to learn and to study. And I also told them, I'll pay for your college all the way through as long as you get straight A's. If you get anything less than an A, you're going to pay for that one semester next year. And our kids got straight A's all the way through. My son got a B in one class, and he said, Dad, I know I have to pay for the next semester. And he did. So that kids will live up to the expectations you put on them. If you have low expectations, they'll live up to them. If you have high expectations, they'll tend to live up to those too. And here's what we just did. And here's a good principle. You're the one with the money. You're the one with the power. You can go to any university you want to. That's fine. But I'll pay for these 5.
Okay.
One of these 5. Okay. So you can go to Steubenville. You can go to Ave Maria. You can go here. You can go here. Well, Dad, I want to be a truck driver. Right. I want to be a truck driver. Well, I think that's great. I like truck drivers now more than ever before after what's gone on in Canada. So I say to him, good, you can go to this truck driving school, because the truck driving school is not going to be philosophy that takes their faith away from them. They're there to teach truck driving or welding. That's fine. But if you want to go to a liberal arts school, you can go to any one you want, but you're paying for it.
Okay.
But I will pay for Steubenville, Ave Maria, St. Augustine, or whatever. These are the 5 I'll pay for. And you have to get straight A's if you go. That makes it easy. Now the kid's going to go to a college where they're not going to tend to lose their faith. And at Steubenville, I think they have a 70% rate of daily mass attendance among the students. My daughter went there, and it only increased her faith. And not only that, she got her MRS degree there. That's Mrs. She found her husband there, and now she found a great guy, and they have homeschooling their 5 kids, and now my grandkids out of their family are going to university. Guess where they're going? One's going to Ave Maria in Florida, one's going to Steubenville, one's going to Wyoming Catholic University. You don't have to fail at this if you take it seriously.
Yeah. So there's like this. Good. Thank you. Not to belabor the point, I guess, but just like this hating on public schooling. Either at the collegiate level or the high school level. I understand you homeschooled your children and your grandkids are being homeschooled, but I feel like it needs to be taken case by case. It's so easy for many commentators today to simply say, oh, public schools, out the window. Don't worry about it. Don't go there. Catholic schools, 9 out of 10 are trash as well. Homeschool your kids. And I being like the ultimate product of public school system, I feel like I can't jump on that bandwagon. Like, not only did I go to a public school, but I also went to...
But let me stop you, though. Public school systems now are different than when you and I went there. Today, they're teaching LGBT. Now, maybe if you live in a nice little country school out in Wyoming or in Nebraska, no. But if you're going to a lot of schools now in California, New York, and other places, Minnesota, or these liberal areas, they are going to be teaching your kids things that you are not going to agree with. And yes, a lot of Catholic schools are poor, and it's hard there because you don't really know who the enemy is. If Sister so-and-so is teaching you things you expect it to be correct, and it may not be. And children don't have the education and the ability to be discerning in those things because they don't know. They're there to learn. And if they're learning wrong Catholic teaching, that's even worse, I think, than going to a public school in some ways. But no matter where you teach, not everybody has the ability. A single mom can't homeschool her kids if she's out trying to make a living, take care of the family. There are people that don't have those options. There are different. Every family is different, I agree. Even among my 4 kids, 2 are homeschooling. The other 2, I don't know what they're going to do. And one's already said she's not going to homeschool. So everybody's different. Yeah. But the parents are primarily the teachers of their kids. This is no matter where you send them. This is what they have to remember. We are the primary educators. If they go to a public school, we need to be in the teacher's face. We need to be challenging our kids of what they're learning. We need to teach them to argue back. When we come home from school, they need to tell us, Mom and Dad, here's what I learned today. And then I tell them why it's right or wrong. And I challenge them about it right or wrong. I teach my kids to think. I teach my kids to reason and think and to know what's right and wrong, not because they're told, but because they have learned to think themselves. That's my job as a dad. I taught my kids to think, not to be afraid of things, but to think about things and make a decision and use good reasoning to do it. Natural law, scripture, teaching, whatever. So no matter what school a kid goes to, no matter where you're able or not able to send them, you are the primary teacher of the kid. And if it's a public school, you better darn well make sure you're involved in their lives and you're involved in that school. If it's a Catholic school, you better be involved there too and make sure the nun's teaching them the correct things. And if not, then you maybe need to vote with your feet there too. If you're homeschooling, that's a great option. But even for some parents, that's not an option. They just don't have the temperament to do it. So, and no
Yeah.
matter what, bottom line is you are the primary instructor of your child, so you have to be the primary one who teaches them, no matter where they go.
Yeah. So I feel like people take that idea of being the primary instructor to be like, okay, I am the primary teacher of my son, therefore I am going to teach him algebra. Whoa, 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 whoa. No. Like, I understand that things are different from 20 years ago when I was in high school. But like, still looking at my life, my parents, I would come home and say like, oh, guess what was taught at school today? And they say, okay, why? I think that's wrong. Why would I say that's wrong? What do you think? Let's think critically. And then I was able to go back to school and argue my case. Sometimes it
Yep.
resulted in a dock of grade, and I was fine with that.
Yep.
Sometimes I actually have memories of like taking a teacher to the head of department and being like, this is wrong because. Ultimately, I
Good.
lost those because they didn't want to, adjust the curriculum. But like, that lesson in itself even taught me, hey, the world isn't fair, and the strength to go up and be like, okay, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you and argue my case and present it in a logical manner to someone who is my superior, to their superior, and try to make a good
Yes.
case. Like, there are many
Good for
lessons
you.
to be learned here.
Good for you. And you did that mainly because if I heard you correctly, your parents were
Yes.
behind you. Your parents
Yes.
taught you to think that, which takes me back to the point that no matter where you go to school, you can be a success or a failure based on parental influence and involvement.
So this kind of we've touched on this several times, and I don't think it's a point of contention between us. I think it's a point of agreement that like the idea of discernment, the idea of making decisions is so phenomenally important. The idea that you can like take all information appropriately and then make a logical conclusion on how to act moving forward for your unique situation. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is a critical skill that is lacking today. If anything is lacking, it's honest assessment of the facts and appropriate critical thinking. That's what I think is wrong. Not necessarily, they're just teaching, CRT at school today, and that's so wrong. There were challenges 100 years ago as well. Remember when we tried to say that all alcohol should be banned or no woman should be allowed to vote? Like, these are apples and oranges, maybe apples and elephants, but like, there were problems before as well. The problem has simply changed, and it's how you, the parent, address these problems appropriately and honestly.
Yeah, to some degree, yes, but I think it is worse today. I think it's much more
Yeah,
nefarious, much more
apples and
egregious
elephants.
when they're teaching my kids in first or second grade that they can choose whether they want to be a boy or a girl.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
that is beyond anything. Maybe before there was other issues, but when they're teaching kids that kind of stuff, and they're no longer teaching them arithmetic and reading and math, they're teaching them sociological mumbo jumbo garbage.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that all teachers are doing that, but it is way too prevalent in the public schools. But I think it's also in some Catholic schools too,
yeah.
if you're in the inner cities in some places. So,
No argument
but I
from me
think
there. I think we're on the
I
same
think
page with
that
that. But
bottom
again, just to
line
say,
on all of it,
yeah,
bottom
go ahead.
line of all of this is that we just have to live a virtuous life. We have to keep all of our spheres, all of the balls juggling with business and with work and family and church and school and all of this. And it's not going to. Nobody ever promised it's going to be easy. There's going to be juggling going on. We're going to make mistakes. When we make mistakes, fall down, smash our face, get back up, wipe the blood off, and keep going. And learn from our mistakes and put our family and our kids primary. And work, we have to do it to make work is also a way to sanctify us, and it's a way to take care of our family. But we shouldn't be doing anything immoral in work. We should, and basically, bottom line is we should be good, intentional disciples of Jesus Christ and raise our family and kids to be the same.
Thank you. Spot on. Okay, so I have, I guess, two more questions, and I've deliberately saved this one for after all the previous conversation. So I started Generation Vatican II because one of the smaller reasons was because I felt that there were mistakes being presented in some of the more prominent Catholic theologians or apologists out there. One of the small reasons why I did it. So I initially said, hey, same team, same fight. I'm not going to call these people out by name. But I have since been debating reevaluating that decision, because part of my responsibility that I'm trying to express through this show is educating people where issues arise, either against Catholic teaching or misrepresentations thereof. Do I, Alex Clark, bear a responsibility to my viewers, to my family, whomever, to call out people by name when I say, so-and-so said recently, directly disobey your bishop?
Yes and no. Nothing
Of
is
course.
nothing is black and white, of course. 1 Thessalonians 5:20 and 21 says, "Do not despise prophesying, but test everything." Test everything. In other words, we're to judge. People always say, "Don't judge." Of course, we're to judge. We have to judge everything, test everything, and hold fast to what's good. Now, should my job be, what is my realm of authority? Is my job to go out and correct all of the bishops and the theologians? Is that my job? Is that Alex's job? I don't think so. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that the people within my realm of influence understand what is right and correct. My job isn't to go correct the Pope or the bishops. My job is to make sure that the people that I reach know the truth and are being taught the truth and are living the faith. And if it means that the people that I'm close to are being influenced by this theologian or this bishop who are teaching wrong, then I need to say to my son, look, the bishop there is wrong about this, and here's why the bishop is wrong. Or this apologist is wrong, and this is why this apologist is wrong. Should I spend my life, get on the blog and in the blogosphere and spend my time criticizing all of the theologians and bishops and apologists who are wrong? No, I've got better things to do, and who am I to do that anyway? And then I come across just as a bitchy, problem-creating, arrogant guy. So no, but I think when it comes to the people that we have influence over, we have to make sure that they know the truth and they know that such and such a person is teaching incorrectly, and be wary of them. But it's not my job to correct the Pope. Whose job is it to correct the Pope? The bishops. If the bishops aren't doing it, then that's a problem. Whose job is it to correct a bishop? Well, the priests around him and those over him. Everybody has their authority who should be correcting them. It's not my job to go around correcting everybody. However, I'm going to make sure that those who I teach and those who are around me. Now, I'm on these kind of podcasts. I'm doing 8 radio shows and podcasts this week. So, but I don't go around talking bad about people. There's people that we've been talking about today that I think are making, some that are in the public sphere that have made some big mistakes in the last couple of weeks. And we talk about it here with my wife. And if somebody came out and said, look, we've been listening to this guy. In fact, somebody wrote to me and said, I've been supporting him for a long time. And do you agree with what he's saying now? And I looked at what he's saying. I said, no. I said, you shouldn't support him anymore, because what he's teaching now is incorrect. But besides that, I think that I think we should be aware of gossips and rumors and judgmentalism, self-righteousness, and but also we don't want to have any complicity and association with evil, and we shouldn't be silent when in the face of error and heresy.
Okay, so first off, to address the first thing you said, like I made that announcement at the beginning of this show today, I'm trying to maintain my responsibilities to my family first and foremost, and part of that involves like not being able to do shows because my job is ramping up. So like I make episodes insofar as I'm able to, after I've changed my son's diaper and cleaned up the toys and made dinner for the wife. Okay, so like I'm trying to make sure I have my responsibilities set appropriately, but then part of that bleeds over into the show where I try to say I say like, hey, we're going through whatever document and it says quote, and there's a reference, citation, this pope, this saint has said, and here's the quote, and then I cite it. So when it comes to where I've tried to say like, hey, I believe this person to be in error, my desire is to follow that lines where it's like, hey, so-and-so says, quote, timestamp, date recorded, whatever, so that other people can then go and check it out and verify that I'm not misrepresenting that person. And then I say, here's why I believe this is wrong. Quote, citation, logical analysis, and then try to present that accordingly. So insofar as I am able, with my responsibilities in order, handled at the appropriate level, talking about the Pope and the Bishop, should I say, like, I believe this to be in grievous error, or just say, like, hey, here's a minor issue? I think one of them, for instance, when I started my second season, there were some people I left just anonymous, and then there were other people that I called out because I believe they had significant incorrect teachings. So the example that I used explicitly was Father Chad Ripperger, because he says that it is a mortal sin for a woman to unnecessarily work outside the home. And I believe that to be significantly in error. And then I explained why. Whereas the anonymous people, I said, hey, like they said XYZ, which I also believe to be in error, fine. Is it more appropriate for me to say this anonymous person actually is, and here's the date that they said it, and here's the time they said it?
It all depends on the person, the situation, and who you're talking to.
Okay.
And it's a matter of it's a prudential judgment.
Okay, prudential judgment. Yeah, that's a well-established concept. Okay.
Right. Are you going after this person because you don't like them? Are you going after them to prove that you're smarter than they are, or to prove to other people how smart you are and how righteous you are? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, wrong reasons to do those kind of things. I tend not to go after people unless I feel that they are a danger to someone that I'm talking to, and then I'll mention them by name. On my blog, I'm careful because I don't want my blog to be a thing where Steve's criticizing this person and that. But for that Father Martin, who's going around waving LGBT flags, I don't mind naming him. I mean, he's naming himself. He's putting himself out there. And but I don't go after people. Like, there's a friend of mine, and I'm not going to mention his name right now because I'm hoping that this is incorrect, but has gone off the deep end in regards to the Pope. And I hope that somebody who has authority over him, or is a good enough friend of his that has influence over him, corrects him on this. I'm not going to write a blog and attack him, though I know some people have. If he calls me and asks me what I think, I'll be honest with him about it, thinking that the Pope is now an anti-Pope.
Okay. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, I think you've done a good job reinforcing my initial opinion, which was like, hey, if it's an issue, my initial desire, things that are not significant enough, it's better to err on the side of anonymity, because really the point, there is benefit to saying this person, but the real benefit is this issue, this topic, this subject. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
And I only got a couple minutes left.
Yes. This is a last thing. Listener question that has been on like the past 4 episodes I've been trying to do. This regards. Okay, I had to talk with this guy a bit about what he means by this. This is a listener question regarding the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. If a superior court issues an illegal or immoral ruling, the lower courts bear a responsibility to act against it. Does this also apply in the Catholic Church?
Of course. Augustine said it, unjust law is no law at all.
Okay.
And when they confronted Peter and John and told them not to preach the gospel, they said, the high priest said, we strictly charge you not to teach in this name. And Peter said, we must obey God rather than man. And he walked out and continued to do what he's doing. The midwives in Egypt were told to kill the baby boys who were born, and they didn't. And they lied to the Pharaoh and said, well, the boys are just strong and they're born before we get there. They lied, and God blessed them for that. There are times where we obey the laws that are just laws. There's time for civil disobedience. And there's time but always there's a higher law than any governmental court law, and that's the law of God, and that's the one we follow. We are good citizens because we follow the law. We obey the law as long as it doesn't force us to contradict the law of God.
So I guess the counter to this would be like, the church has a hierarchical structure of obedience as well. Priests swear obedience to their bishop. The bishop doesn't swear obedience, but like he is a bishop.
Not
and so
unconditionally. Not
Yes.
unconditionally.
Okay. Yeah, like in issues of if they tell him, go do this sin, that's something they can't do.
Again, it's a matter of prudential judgment. The
Okay.
priest, there's a certain point where we swear allegiance to God. Is the only one who's never going to ask us to do anything wrong, necessarily. And a priest may lay on the ground and promise to his bishop obedience, poverty, and chastity, whatever. But never is that unconditional. It's always conditioned on the fact that we're being told to do the correct thing. And if they don't, then an unjust law is no law at all, and there is a place for civil disobedience.
Okay. So
in
even
the church or in the government.
So like ultimately, again, responsibility to yourself, your salvation. Like, even though God gave us this church, individual members in it can still make mistakes. They are still sinners, and it is up to you. Yeah, and it is up to you to ensure, like, you understand where a mistake has been made and that you do not follow them, because
Right.
follow them in faithful obedience when it is correct to do, but like not avoid it where it's incorrect.
Right. And people will draw the line in different places based on their knowledge and their conscience. But I have always considered there's certainly a time for rebellion. There's certainly a time for civil disobedience, both in a church setting or in a civil setting.
Mm-hmm.
But our goal should always be to obey. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13 that those who have been put in charge of us are there by God, and they don't bear the sword in vain. And we are to obey and submit to our leaders, and that's both the leaders of the church and the civil government, or for children with their parents. But there's always a line to be drawn beyond this point. I cannot obey you anymore. I cannot follow this. I have to resist.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned civil disobedience in civic life and in church life. Could you give an example out of church history where civil disobedience to your church superiors was necessary?
Well, when the popes went to Avignon instead of Rome,
Okay.
Catherine of Siena wrote the Pope a very scathing letter and said, "Get back to Rome." It's look at the time when the attorney Thomas More refused to bend his knee to the king. There was a time where he said, "I can't do it." All the other bishops collapsed, didn't they? And they were all encouraging him to collapse.
Yeah.
All the other bishops were saying, Thomas, don't go along with it. And Thomas said no. He disobeyed all of his superiors at them. He wasn't a bishop. And yet he was a married man who was a counselor to the king, and all of his bishops and his family were even trying to get him to go along, and he didn't. He disobeyed church authority there. He said, "No, I'm going to stay," because he knew the moral teaching of the church. There's always a time where we have to become willing to be martyrs. I told my kids, I want you to raise my grandkids to be martyrs. There's going to be times where they're going to have to say no to somebody, and it may mean their life. And don't ever back down when it means giving up Jesus or his church and the moral teaching of the church. That is primary, even if I have to die for it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Hey, Steve, thank you once again. Thank you for coming back
You're
on
welcome.
the show so soon.
I'll send you the file.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone at Jerusalem Jones for social media accounts, CatholicConvert.com. Check out all his work there. That has been absolutely fantastic and wonderful in my life as well. Once again, thank you for coming on. Everyone, have a good night. Steve, wonderful. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for, again, like I said at the beginning, showing me where I was incorrect about things. I was really hoping to get that out of that. I think it's important for me, but also important for general discussion to be like, hey, I've made a public persona of myself, and here are issues where I am wrong. So I think that is very.
Well, I think you have good gut instincts. I think you're correct. I think you have good gut instincts. I think you're idealistic and you're young, and so from that standpoint, you haven't been tempered by the world to some degree. You haven't